Hey up, I'm Chris. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I thought I'd do a video just talking about AI art again. I've not really been checking in that much with the news. I've been experimenting a bit with image generation, but this is going to be more sort of intuitive predictions, I guess, for how AI and the art world will correlate in the future. I've never really cared that much. I'll just start off by saying this. I've never really cared that much about the art world. Obviously, I've been involved in it, and there are different types of the art world. There is the art market, and there's the art world, which is basically. So the art world, inverted commas, is. I don't know. It's like the art network. It's like museums, galleries, collections. Collectors, curators, agents, basically all that, which is fine. Obviously, people in working academics, blah 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 blah, professors, people who history professors, whatever. They are, and many of them are also artists as well. But that's like the sort of art world, as it were. And then you have artists who are, could be also in the art world, but often are just artists. Like they have a day job doing something else. That's what the bracket I come under. So I don't work within the art world, so therefore I'm considered an outsider because, I'm also self-taught, so I never went to an academic institution to study or learn art, right? So that makes you what is for some reason termed as an outsider artist, which is a stupid label. I don't know why people use it. Often it's just another tool of ostracizing people who. Anyway, I won't go on a rant about that. I've talked about that quite a bit in the past. It's just a stupid label that people way that categorize art forms anyway. But again, this is not about that. It's about AI and art and everything. So. Obviously, one of the big problems I think with artificial intelligence art is I think the main risk of it is it's just going to reduce people's creativity. To be honest, there is a creative part to making prompts. Like I've been doing some myself. There is a certain creativity to it, but it's the creativity of how to structure a sentence, right, and how to. So it's really just. And the other thing you have to remember is that all that the Mid-Journey or something or whatever, like any ChatGPT generating text, it's all doing it just basically as pattern matching, as pattern recognition. So it's only doing it based on structures that have existed prior to it. Because actually, interestingly, if you look at the early onset of modernism, someone like, for example, Ezra Pound, who's a very controversial poet, but he started to sort of deconstruct language, right? So. I suppose the only thing is though, something like that, all it takes is someone to start training the models on deconstruction and it can do its own deconstructions. So maybe that's not even safe, maybe the last gasp of art, as it were, will be when AI can generate data. And the interesting thing of that is data was always considered an anti-art. There's obviously the post-war movement, sort of nihilistic, deconstructive, destructive in terms of deconstructive, but they were also communists as well, basically, essentially. Anyway, not fully, but there was mostly communists, really. What else? I think definitely there is probably a lot of artists feel this, especially painters, because I'm a painter and a writer amongst other things. So I think we're feeling it the hardest. I'm literally back staying at my parents now after I've had and that's not only because of AI art, obviously. There's been a bit of self-sabotaging that's gone on, but it is hard not to feel disappointed when something that you've invested a lot of time in. And most artists, most painters, even digital painters or any type of artist really. I'm more of a traditional artist, but I do digital art as well as game design, a bunch of other stuff. But now it's it's hard not to feel threatened by it, right? Because, okay, so for most of my life, I've done like IT work, like I've done like office jobs and stuff. Something's been quite not that interesting, but I've had to do it just to make a living. But then I've also spent an awful lot of time doing my own work, like painting, drawing, having shows, investing a lot of time, often for like very little money. Like I've sold paintings, but I've never made thousands of pounds. Yeah. But now a bunch of people are just going to be able to do that. And the problem is that you saw this with the NFTs, right? What was the so-called art that went to the top with NFTs? It was fucking shit. It was like those Doji coiny fucking, the blandest, worst, fucking most shit, crap art was suddenly worth loads of money. It's like, it's just shit. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I'm not. You can think what you like about NFT, sort of like, I don't know, dogs with funny hats art. All right, fair enough. Like, it's I'm not being a complete bastard here, like a visual bastard. It can be quite funny, but it's not art, really. Like, I wouldn't advocate for. Obviously, people can enjoy that if they want, but it has no real value. What value is there in a? It's like the worst kind of. It's not even pop art. Like, at least pop art had a sort of the ironic distance thing. Like, you know, even Warhol could paint. Warhol could have interesting ideas. Warhol could provoke, for example. I mean, all this NFT stuff. It's art just designed to. It's like candy. It's nothing to it. And I'm probably just sounding like an angsty approaching 40 painter, which I am. Like I admit I'm a bit of a tortured artist, but hence why we need artists. Like you need the voices of dissent. You need voices that deal with difficult subjects that a lot of people who aren't artists won't even approach or even try and think about. Right. I think one of the main things if you're an artist is to look where no one else is looking. I mean, like I did this recent show recently, Silent Savages. A lot of that was dealing with, I guess, like a psychic reaction to the war that's going on in Ukraine in a minute. Now, I wanted to show the human cost of that. I wasn't really particularly in a surrealistic way, anyway. But anyway, it was quite hard to paint. I put a lot of work into it. I sold the 2 paints though, so at the end of the day, that for me is a win, to be honest. But again, like it's nothing I could actually make money from or live off, obviously. So I think, I just think that's one of the cynical drawbacks really of artificial intelligence and art generation. Is obviously it's going to be taking. People have been struggling to create imagery for. With little or no recognition, or even like I said, like return on the investment that they make on their own artwork, right? And there are probably going to be systems developed which will offer remunerations for artists who've had their work scraped, which should be right. Like I think probably we'd have to develop, as a culture and internet culture and everything, a crediting system. So basically, probably a bit like the blockchain, I guess, right? So because that's probably the way it should be, because essentially I don't know, but like basically if you can, there's already websites that can tell if your work's been scraped. So if that's provable, then you should at least every time I guess it's been scraped, but you should probably get some sort of return on that, because the companies that created these engines have. Not all of them, obviously get some mid-tier startups or whatever, but especially if it's any company associated with huge billion-dollar profits, then of course if you're an artist you can have a case for saying, look, you trained on my artwork, I haven't got much money, look, you're even struggling, you are directly profiting from imagery which I spent money at my labor, basically. Why can I not get a return on that? And this is actually something I'm going to have to think about as well, because I have been using Midjourney, like I said. I have started using it for a game I'm developing, so that will invariably, I'm only doing like basic comic book style, but obviously if I'm going to be, really seriously think about this, then you have to live by your own principles, otherwise you don't have them. A principle by definition isn't a principle unless you apply it in your own life, right? Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. It's obviously an interesting time, but it's also depressing as well. Obviously, like I said, I've had financial problems for the last year or so. I find myself back on my parents. Mental health's been on the decline. Physical health, even a bit, has been on a bit of a decline. Not too bad, just getting a lot of bad migraines and that. So it's hard not to feel frustrated, But then, I'm not like saying that like to be some sort of oh, woe is me. I'm lucky. That's the craziest thing. I'm still lucky to have support. I would hate to think what position I'd be in if I didn't have, like parents I could just stay with for a month or two, right? I'd be on the streets. And like that, for a lot of painters and struggling artists, that could even be the reality for them. Like, I know when I can't move back to London, like for example. So I had my show in London recently, which was great. I loved having that show, but I couldn't live there. This costs, well, A, for a start, I got too much debt. Your average studio in London is going to cost about 250 quid. Your average rent for a studio in London is going to be at least, like a studio. Well, say for example, if you wanted to get a flat and a studio, a flat in London is going to be at least, even if you're sharing, at very minimum 850 quid a month. A studio at least 180, at least for the very smallest studio, but probably about 200, 250 quid. It usually goes up to about 300. So there you go. That's over £1,000. Then not including your electric, and basically, if you wanted to like have a studio flat, have a rented studio in London, travel around, eat obviously, and have electric, you're talking probably at least 1,500, maybe £2,000. For most people, that's your entire income. For most working class or middle class people, even in London where there are higher, you get higher wages usually, nearly all your money is going to go on living. And and if you don't even think about getting a house or a mortgage in London, it's just impossible. It's not even worth thinking about. And the problem with that is actually that, so say take London as a good example, because I know the city well, obviously, and this has been happening for a long time, unfortunately. There is a process of gentrification which has been going on for London for ages. It goes on in every city, but basically London is just becoming, obviously it's always been a city of culture. There is a lot of culture there, amazing museums, there are amazing galleries. There are still like community run galleries with lots of interesting events and everything, but they're struggling a lot more now. And they are really trying, I think, to bring more people in and just get them engaged in art and buying original art. Unfortunately, I think though in some ways we've just been brought up in a culture, obviously, of mass consumerism. So I think for years, people, instead of supporting artists who just even live locally or just painters or whatever, they've been buying like mass-produced IKEA sort of wall prints and stuff. So I think in a way, obviously, like painters and artists themselves will have to probably change the way that they interact with, their audience or the potential market. And one thing I've always tried to do anyway as an artist is just like, I just try and sell directly to people. I don't try and have a middleman. Obviously, I'm not against like having gallery involvement or gallery, like a sort of gallery middle person, but I'd have to have the right ethics and everything for me to want to be involved in that. I actually had an interesting conversation a while ago with someone. They were running a gallery, and I just went in there and talked to this gallery a few times. It's in London actually. So I just told her I was a painter and everything. And I remember her saying this because it really stuck in my mind. She said, "You remind me of this man who was in our university. he was light years ahead of himself, of all the other students there. Like, just like sort of truly original, but his work wouldn't sell in a gallery. And I was like, what does that even mean? So you're saying that you're comparing me to a student who was in a university class, I assume, or college class, and you're saying his work was better than everybody else's. In her view, it's subjective, but his work wouldn't sell. Like that, like if you actually examine that language, it just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, like this is the gallery owner. She's saying basically that the work you're doing is probably progressive and it's probably a bit ahead of it. It's basically saying it was ahead of my time. It's like, so isn't art supposed to be about being on the cutting edge? Like, you'll encounter this constantly in the art world, and obviously, like as an artist, I have to try and be in the cutting edge all the time. It's just that you have to constantly evolve with it. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that with the AI question. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance in this video, of course, because it's my emotions are connected to my work. How can they not be? I mean, I'm not a bloody robot myself. Anyway, we're not back. About 80 minutes left. Okay, so anyway, it's just a bunch of thoughts there, a bunch of ruminations, a bunch of hopefully maybe sort of conclusions. I don't know. But yeah. Like I said, I don't think the Luddite approach is going to work completely. We have to try and find some sort of middle ground in the entire way as artists that we approach and deal with AI art. As always, I think probably might be worth. I'm not sure if AN, in terms of the UK organisations, are up to speed with all this. I guess they are, but they're sort of they were an organisation. I've not really looked into them much, but they often provided advice for practicing artists in the UK, at least. I mean, one of the things to bear in mind is that painters, especially and artists in general, have one of the lowest incomes of any group of people in the world. Really, usually, though obviously there's a tiny minority of artists who are the lovies of this, galleries or scenes or whatever. Fair play to them, whatever. Like, I don't resent them for that, but most artists in general, like your average artist, is earning, I think the average is 12 or 15k a year. So like most of their money comes from like workshops in the community. Obviously, you get a few painting sales maybe to sustain them, but they're working class people, right? They're not earning a great deal of money. Maybe they get a working tax credit on top of it. So I don't know if you're watching this and you're going to get any sort of message from this, my message would just be support artists who are working. If you like a digital artist's work, say, can I have a print of that? Negotiate costs, just explain your situation. Most artists are fairly open to, just negotiating price. Obviously, every artist is different, but, if they're not greedy sort of, artists, or if they, it depends, we're moody buggers. But obviously, paintings, just approach artists. If you see an artist like work, you like, buy it. And if they're not asking you for like 10 grand for an abstract blob, and which you don't even like anyway or whatever, then just buy it. Like, if you can afford it, buy it. And support living artists. Otherwise, probably a lot more of them will just hang themselves and kill themselves, right? We don't need the world doesn't need more Van Goghs. I mean, Van Gogh was a brilliant painter, but but he was driven to insanity. Because he was before his time, obviously. He's like going through the post-impressionism thing. Probably one of the first expressionist painters to really start using colour in the way that he did. So, I don't know, maybe buy, if there's a contemporary Van Gogh out there, then maybe buy some of their paintings and support them instead of just letting them fucking, go into further despair. It's a radical notion, I know, but there you go. Anyway, I was a bit rambling, I guess. Ugh. But yeah, that's it.